Frankly, there's only one person that's running it. You know who that is? It's me.
Well, this is up. President Trump says there is only one person in charge of immigration policy, himself. But the issue is quickly turning into a game of survivor for the last two remaining members of the original Trump administration charged with dealing with immigration, Stephen Miller and Jared Kushner. Miller is reportedly calling for tougher policies on the border, while Kushner has been working, as he so often does, on a softer bipartisan approach for months. So when the tribe speaks, whose plan will survive? In true Trumpian fashion, he teased the answer when talking with reporters yesterday, saying this about Jared Kushner's plan. Quote, well, we'll talk to you about it soon. I think very exciting, very important. Robbie, look, let's talk about this dynamic. As I say, many of the other players in this drama have fallen to the wayside. So you have these two here, the president's son-in-law and this guy that he's treating like one of them, I guess you can say. It is a binary. This is a strange dynamic between the two, and it's strange when you look at the direction the president's heading and why Kushner is there, saying he's talked to 50-plus groups about what they might find palatable. Right. Where on earth in this space is there room for this softer plan that Jared Kushner allegedly is pioneering?
Well, it's strange. You use the word strange. It's strange in so many ways. It's strange that the president has hired his own son-in-law. It is strange that he has this, young man who kind of came out of nowhere and all of a sudden is driving all of the policy and seems to be a bit of a Svengali with the president. I think there is space for Kushner to get in because Kushner is the survivor. He's survived everything, and anytime you take on him and Ivanka, you lose, it seems. So, but I think the other thing we can't forget here is the president loves the chaos, and so I wouldn't be surprised if this is just a flare-up, and then they sort of settle things and they go on their way. As we were talking about earlier, the president is determined for this whole immigration issue to flare up constantly. That is his political strategy. And so it may be in his mind, this is just, act 17 of this drama. And then next time we'll go on to something else. He'll fire somebody else or something like that. So I think he's perfectly fine with it.
Gabe, Jared Kushner provides this wonderful veneer on all of these issues for the president. He can take the hardline approach, but say time and time again that Jared is working on something else on the sidelines.
Yeah, I mean, this is like the season 4 episode where ratings are flagging and the producers are like, let's just bring back one of the original fights, one of the old characters that everyone likes.
Bannon's in Rome right now. We can't get him back.
Well, but we still hear about it. But the idea here being that, Jared does represent something to a lot of people in Washington, which is this, this idea that we had, or that they had at the early stages of the presidency, that he was going to be a moderating force. Clearly, that's not actually the case in any substantive way. But this is, a proxy for a much larger fight. And it's really the fight for what Trump stands for. And because he was, in some ways, sort of a blank slate to a lot of Republicans, there was this tug of war for a long time. But really, there's not really much evidence that Kushner and Miller are actually going to diverge all that much, and certainly not in public when this actually comes to the forefront. At the end of the day, the president is going to make a decision, and he's going to put forth a policy, and Republicans are going to say, oh, this is a decent policy, and some of them are going to not talk about it at all. Democrats are going to say it's going to be terrible, and then we're going to be talking about immigration for the next 2 years, and there's no world in which Trump puts forth a policy that Democrats or even some moderate Republicans say, you know what, actually, that's not a bad policy.
I mean, back to the rule of law here. Yes, you've got Stephen Miller, the Svengali, as Robbie said, but now he's taking on this outsized role, calling agencies to make sure they're doing what the president thinks they should be doing, beginning to meddle with other agencies in a way that he wasn't able to before. So there's kind of like Stephen Miller Unchained that we're seeing here in D.C. now.
Yeah, and I mean, there are definitely ethical violations, going on in there, and I think more broadly, though, it goes back to what we were talking about in the first segment about Stephen Miller doesn't care whether the policies he's putting forth are legal or not. I mean, that's where he and Trump, I think, share this bond.
And many of the policies that he's pioneered have been the ones that have been cut down.
Exactly, that the court rulings that you referred to, and so that's where that mind meld comes in. I mean, the idea that Jared Kushner is sort of the savior of the rule of law here is talk about bizarre, right? I mean, this is the guy who couldn't get a security clearance and it was overruled and has just an unimaginable amount of conflicts of interest, financial and otherwise, and what else. But he maybe is sort of like Kristen Nielsen in this story, in that, maybe he understands that in order for something to actually get passed, it has to fall within the bounds of law. It's a really low standard. I mean, that's what it comes back to also. It's just that our standards at this point are so low that we're talking about Jared Kushner as the hero in this.
Christine, there's an Alice in Wonderland quality to this, isn't there? The way that we're looking in the mirror and everything is reflected in this kind of
Yeah, I mean,
way.
well, and Robert, you mentioned Howard Dean. It's like Howard Dean gets knocked out because he has a scream. Donald Trump is on camera, saying grabbing women by whatever, and here we are. But I also think, Kushner and Miller give the president some sort of racial, ethnic, religious cover in the sense that he has these two very prominent Jewish individuals. So he's constantly calling Democrats anti-Semites. He's constantly pushing policies that are just borderline genocidal when it comes to certain communities at the border. And he can say, well, even though he says I'm a nationalist, he can sort of distance himself from Charlottesville because he's got Jared, he's got Stephen. And I think that, to me, is what's so dangerous, because as he meddles and pals around with white supremacists, white nationalists, people who are very proud of that vein of America in a lot of ways, and globally, as we've seen, he can just sort of say, well, no, because I have these two. And, they're sort of upholding something that's somewhat different, and it's actually not.
Hey there, I'm Chris Hayes from MSNBC. Thanks for watching MSNBC on YouTube. If you want to keep up to date with the videos we're putting out, you can click subscribe just below me, or click over on this list to see lots of other great videos.